Vancouver is unique because it's, by world standards, a small city. We're only 750,000 people in a region of almost 3 million. So by world standards, we're small, but many opportunities to live, to work, to enjoy the outdoors all year round, to enjoy the multicultural community, which brings a range of ideas and a wide variety of ethnic foods, a wide variety of services, jobs, recreational activities. My name's McAfee. I've lived in Vancouver almost all my life, and for 32 years, I worked for the city of Vancouver, the last 10 of those as co-director of planning. Vancouverism is a term which it depends who you're asking as to what answer you get. If you ask an architect, they'll talk about tall, slim buildings with a podium around the bottom, which has a combination of local services and housing for families who are living at high density. If you talk to somebody in the transportation sector, they'll tell you about sustainable transportation, walking, biking, and transit as ways to move around the city. In other words, having jobs, housing, recreation services within a 10 to 15-minute walk. And that's certainly a principle of the inner city of Vancouver. In the 1950s and early 1960s, most North American cities built housing, often for returning veterans from World War II, in the suburbs. And then they built freeways from those suburbs to get to inner city downtown jobs. In the late 1960s, there was a plan to develop a freeway right into downtown Vancouver. It would have destroyed Chinatown and nearby neighborhoods, and it would have also put a barrier between where people would live, work, and play, and the waterfront. The freeway started construction and the protests started. The protests stopped the freeway in 1972. A new council was elected, and that new council said no freeway. Then the question was, if no freeway, how do you get people to work? How do you have people move around the city and the region? And council had 3 answers. The first of those answers was build new housing next to downtown jobs. In Vancouver's case, there were large pieces of old industrial land adjacent to the downtown, which council thought they could redevelop into new housing. Secondly, council said that that new housing should have a range of household types and incomes, including families with children, older and younger people. And council then said, whatever is built needs a full range of services, including transit for those who aren't able to walk and bike to work. Building housing downtown wasn't an easy task. There were 3 challenges. One of those challenges was that the development community didn't really think people wanted to live downtown. And so in response to that, the city assembled 80 acres of land on the south shore of what is called False Creek. And the city organized the redevelopment of that land. They created new housing designs for people to live at high density. And they put all the parks, services in place. People immediately moved into the co-op, nonprofit, and market housing. The city proved people wanted to live downtown. The second challenge the city faced was on private land. How do you ensure that there's the full range of services for people who are going to live there? And the city's answer to that was to say to the development community, If you're going to build near downtown, then you're going to have to provide on large sites the full range of services, not only the sewer, the water, the local streets, but also the parks, the open space, the community centers, land for non-market housing, and land for schools and daycares. So as a condition of development, developers weren't too pleased with having to put all the services in, particularly when the city said those services have to go in before you get your building permit. Then the city found that when they required the developer to put in the parks, the open space, the seawall before construction, the developers then found that people would come and actually put down a pre-sale on property. So funds came from people who were going to live there in the future to help build and construct some of those services. Then the third challenge was that the city wanted people to be using sustainable transportation. They wanted to encourage walking, biking, and transit use. It was easy for the city to improve and reconfigure roads and sidewalks between these new developments and the 10 to 15-minute walk into downtown jobs. But not everybody can live downtown. So those who did continue to live in suburban areas could get access to the downtown without a car. Vancouver Council wanted to make sure that the communities around the downtown had a full range of housing, including housing for children. So Vancouver looked at what we could do to create some guidelines to make family housing work. We couldn't see anywhere else in North America where this was being done, so we decided to create our own guidelines. And the guidelines were created by a combination of engaging people, mostly single mothers with young children, learning from them what would work in terms of higher density apartment living. Another project that was great fun was that the city hadn't had an overall plan since the 1930s. And the world had changed a lot by the 1970s, 1980s, and indeed by the mid-1990s. So this project, called City Plan, involved over 100,000 people. That's about 40% of the households in the city of Vancouver. It involved school children. It involved people from the multicultural community. In fact, we ran the program in 8 languages. People who were interested in getting together and coming up with ideas. We called these groups city circles, and their task was to develop ideas for the city about jobs, about housing, about arts, about culture, even about governance. Over about 3 years, these thousands of people came together. And this was just before people had access to internet, web-based material. And then we had some large events where people came, looked at everybody else's ideas, identified the ideas which were most likely to make a livable city. And some of those ideas, such as building greenways, which are bikeways and walkways through the city, were so well supported that we didn't wait till the end of the plan. Council already started funding the greenways, and that was an inspiration to the people who were involved because they could actually see their ideas getting into action.